I realize I have a really unique story. I've been telling it for 31 years. It's impossible for me to not know how unique it is. By the time I was 27, our business was $10 million by that time. It was growing. I had a beautiful wife, the house, the car, the money. And then I woke up and realized I had it all, but it cost me who I was. Because I was told if I'm mentally tough, if I've got a strong mindset, I can do anything, right?
Yeah.
By the way, I'm going to give you a little secret. That's only part of the equation. Come check us out because it's pretty incredible what can happen in minutes and moments that most people believe is either impossible or they think is going to take decades.
All right, guys. Hey, welcome to the Bear Fruit Show, where we have Brian Bogert, an amazing guest here. And the show is all about learning from other people, allowing their ceilings to be your floor. And I'm excited for Brian and just the level of mentorship and his story, and not allowing the trash to hold him back, but really just all of it, right? This is really, I feel like, aligns with your story. So I'm excited to dive in.
Man, I'm happy to be here today. It's always fun to pour into other people's worlds and find a way to create some impact together.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So tell me, Brian, tell me where it started. How did you get to where you're at, and who are the people who helped you get there?
Yeah, so that's I'll have to take it in chunks and segments, but I think one of the important pieces around that, because I've been really blessed to be surrounded by some incredible people, and I've also been to some of the darkest, most painful places that any human can visit. So, the spectrum and the contrast to life is what it's all about. So I will start in the beginning though, because that's going to frame a variety of the conversation.
Awesome.
When I was 7, my mom, my brother, and I went to our local Walmart, and we went to just get a 1-inch paintbrush to complete a home improvement project we were working on. And as we were walking back to the car, I was the first one in the car. Anybody who's known me more than 2 minutes knows I talk fast, I walk fast. I've got this energy and vigor for life. Like, it's who I am. So I was excited to get home and put that paintbrush to use. But this was back in the days, brother, before there was key fobs, right? So I had to wait for my mom to literally stick her hand in the inner purse, grab the keys, stick it in the door, turn it. And in the time that it took her to do that, just a few feet behind me, there was a truck that pulled up in front of the store, parked, and the driver and middle passenger got out. Passenger all the way to the right felt the truck moving backwards. So Kyle, he did what any one of us would do. He scooted over to put his foot on the brake, but he instead hit the gas. Combination of shock and force threw him up on the steering wheel, up on the dashboard, and before you know it, he's catapulting 40 miles an hour across the parking lot right at me with no time to react. Goes up and over the median, it goes over the tree in the median, hits our car, and then it knocks me down. Runs over me diagonally, tears my spleen, leaves a tire track scar on my stomach, and continued on to sever my left arm completely from my body.
Oh my gosh.
This was August 10th, 1992. It was a 6:10 p.m. and a 115-degree day. The next thing my mom heard was my brother's voice saying, "Mom, Brian's arm is over there." And as she looked up the parking lot, she saw a string of my muscle cooking like hamburger on the asphalt.
Wow.
I have to say, and I always call attention to this right at this point in the story, because there was a nurse that walked out of the store right when this took place, and she saw the literal life and limb scenario in front of her. I'm forever indebted to this woman because she came immediately into my life and by choice saved it and saved my limb. She stopped the bleeding at the main wound and saved my life, and instructed some innocent bystanders to run inside, grab a cooler and fill it with ice to get my detached limb on ice within minutes. So if it wasn't for this woman, Kyle, I either wouldn't be here with you today, or I'd be here today with a cleaned up stump. And why do I want to pause for 1 second on this woman? Because I've said forever, I'm forever indebted to her. But that became even more powerful last August when I met her for the very first time on the 30th anniversary of the accident. I learned that she had a friend with her that day. A friend that was also a nurse who had all the same sets of skills and training, and her friend turned her head and went on over the way. Now, what I want to make sure you and everybody understand is I have no malintent, no negative intent, like emotion or anything towards that person. That is well within their right, like nothing bad. But why do I pause there? Because it reinforces the importance of a choice in a singular moment and the impact and ripple effect it can have to not only impact or save one life, but hundreds of millions of lives as a result of one decision.
Yeah.
Right.
Because how many lives have you impacted because of this, right?
Oh, countless. I mean, we're on a mission right now to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as we can. So I, at the moment, don't even know the exact number, to be perfectly honest, because I stopped keeping track. It's not about the score. It's about the impact. But what I really wanted to pause there, because it's like that one decision, right? And I do want everyone to hear this as well. I realize I have a really unique story. I've been telling it for 31 years. It's impossible for me to not know how unique it is. But the more I've told it and the more I'm out in the world, the more I realize that each and every one of you has a unique story. Yeah. What's important is that you learn how to pause and become aware of the lessons you can extract from your stories. and then become intentional with how do you apply those in your life moving forward. And we all have the ability to do that. We also all have the ability to tap into the collective wisdom of other people's stories, shortening our own curve to lessons. This is the whole concept of ceilings and floors connecting and others being able to pull you up, right? It's
Yeah.
about being able to leverage and understand other people's experiences, lessons, and wisdom in a way that maybe you don't have to experience the same pains, hardships, and resistance that they might have on their own journey.
Hmm. Wow. That was really impactful to hear that. And honestly, I hadn't heard that before. We just started kind of interacting and following each other. So I'm just kind of taking that all in. That was powerful. And almost like in a moment of like an angel, like just happens to be a nurse is there, or the good Samaritan, right? The people who
Right.
constantly pass the person on the road, and then the one person who decides to stop. And I think it's when we decide to stop and take action, and that can have that, like you said, that ripple effect of changing not only your life but all the countless lives. You're on a task to change billions of people's lives, and it's had that ripple effect. And so, man, that's amazing. Period. So
It really
what?
is. And I will tell you, it was a very
Yeah,
profound moment in my life being able to meet her for the first time 30 years later. You know,
yeah.
it's interesting. We met on the anniversary of the accident within 2 hours of when the accident would have been. And that was just
Whoa.
some of the most profound, magical 15 minutes of my entire life. I asked
Was
her,
that
well, I think the first
intentional?
question
Was
I
that
asked her is
intentional? How
why?
did that? Yeah.
I was looking for her for a decade and I couldn't
Wow.
find her. And then my mom ended up somehow getting lucky and landing on a string that she found around, getting in touch with her like a week before the anniversary.
Whoa.
And she contacted her and made it happen. And it was a surprise they gave me on the 30th
Dang.
anniversary. They gave me her contact information and said, she's expecting your call. And
Whoa.
it truly, I wasn't prepared for it. And I only could be on the phone for 15 minutes because it was a lot for me to process.
Yeah,
It
Brian.
really was. It was that deep and that impactful. But one of the first questions I asked her was, why? Why did you do this? And she said, I never even once thought about it. She said there was zero hesitation, there was zero thought and intention into it. She said, I just acted based on what I believed was right and what my training would allow me to do.
Wow. That's awesome to be in such a place, you know. Yeah, that's amazing. That's truly, truly amazing. What, I mean, as you kind of, I mean, you were 7 years old.
Yeah, I was 7.
What, I guess, what was that like going through elementary school and all of that? Like, what came with that?
It was a challenge. It was a big challenge. I for a semester, the first semester of the fall, second grade, I had a at home teacher, an at home tutor, because I couldn't go to school. And then when I did go to school, starting in January and February, I wasn't allowed to go to recess because I was still undergoing so many procedures.
Mm,
It's interesting because the schooling element was one part of it, but it was only a fraction of like the full impact of that whole period. Uh, I mean, I had a 13-year window where there was a lot of narratives that were kind of being conditioned into me through my experience. And the first and foremost was when I first came out of the hospital, I had a teddy bear in between my arms. So my arm had to heal at 90 degrees. And I've got a fly
mm.
flying around me, by the way. So if anybody's watching this or like sees me
No,
like
you're.
twitching or whatever, that's what's it's like. I promise you might not be able to see it on camera, but I'm not twitching. Um, but as I came out of the hospital, inevitably they'd ask me, like, be like, "Hey, what happened to you?" Right, expecting me to answer like any other 7-year-old boy that was like, "Yeah, I was riding my bike down the street and I crashed, or I flew off the jungle gym, or whatever." Right, but
Yeah.
I'd look them deadpan in the eye and I'd say I was run over by a truck and my left arm was torn.
Mm,
And I got used to seeing jaws hit the floor, but then immediately 9 out of 10 people would pause and they'd immediately turn to look at my parents for validation, which
mm.
told me they didn't believe my truth, the one I was living in and I was wearing on my body and and my soul. And I just honestly answered, but yet they didn't see it. They didn't understand it. They're like, this is too audacious for a 7-year-old. And yeah, my parents would confirm it and just follow right through. But then
Yeah.
the second thing those same individuals would do is they would view me through their lens of what they'd be capable of in my situation, immediately limiting me.
Oh, wow.
right? Think about all the times in life people don't feel like their intent, their truth, their reality isn't seen or understood by the world, right? Like that they don't feel connected, they don't feel safe and protected in the environments that they're in because those who are looking at them don't believe their own truth, right? And I'm
Yeah.
experiencing that at 7 in a really profound way because my physical arm was detached from my body, and now I'm
Yep.
feeling detached from my own reality in some ways. And as this is all taking place, right, what happened? I created what I believe is a really strong mental narrative because I was told if I'm mentally tough, if I've got a strong mindset, I can do anything, right?
Yeah.
By the way, I'm going to give you a little secret. That's only part of the equation, but I didn't learn that for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Now my mindset was really solid. I went to a place where I said, Brian's good, Brian's strong, Brian's capable, Brian can do anything himself. And oh, by the way, I did. I was a tennis pro at 14. I learned how to water ski with one arm. I was mountain biking like at 12. I had started 2 businesses by the time I was 15. I was on a
Yeah.
mission to prove to the world what I was capable of. And if I'm being honest, at this point in my life, it was really to prove it to myself, right?
Yeah.
But that narrative is something that carried me because I did a lot of really cool things early and was breaking these boundaries. And then I find myself at 20, you know, I'm in a place where after what I went through, I almost have to brush the limits of death just to feel alive.
Hmm.
So I would consistently do things in a very extreme way, right? Like my rush threshold's like up here. But
Yeah.
I was just snowboarding, and I was a decent snowboarder. I mean, I really was. I would do trick parks. I loved it. It was so much fun. And I went down one time and I re-broke my left arm in the same spot that it came off at when I was 20.
Hmm.
And it was a compound fracture. And that is what started to really shift me to open myself to other people so that I could learn and actually find where they're at in their floor. Why? Because I went 10 months with my arm hanging by my side. I went through 7 surgeons who were afraid to touch me because of the medical malpractice of a different physiological structure in my arm.
Yeah.
I got into the deepest, darkest, most depressed period I'd ever been in my life as an adult, probably ever. Put on 45 pounds in 10 months, and I was like angry and I was resentful and I was frustrated because I was surrounded by people at that time in my life, Kyle, but I was completely alone.
Hmm.
And then I started to realize that it's not that these people didn't care about me. It's not that they didn't love me. It's not that they weren't even worried about me in some cases. They bought into the narrative I'd created. Brian's good. Brian's strong. Brian's capable. Brian can do anything himself. And what they added to it that I didn't was, oh, and he'll ask for help if he needs it. Now I find
Hmm.
myself in one of the most vulnerable periods in my adult life, and I lacked the courage to ask for help. But that's when I started to focus on human connection because I realized how disconnected I really was, right? And I started to focus on vulnerability and authenticity because I believe
Yeah.
that's the glue that bonds human connection. And I got
Yep.
really good at asking just enough questions, sharing just enough about myself for others to drop their armor so I could drive a Mack truck through and continue to not have the focus on me. But the reality of it is that that's what at least opened me to realize that I need more help. I need to ask for help, and I need to
Hmm.
find guides, and mentors that I can learn from to shorten my curve to learning. And I started doing that actively, even though I was still a little blind to the full depth of human connection.
Yeah. No, that's a powerful statement right there. Like you were starting to be vulnerable to help other people be vulnerable, but really keeping the focus on them and not on you
Mm-hmm.
because you didn't want to have to deal with that, which was really deep inside.
Yeah.
I mean, that, I think for where you're at in life, I mean, there's a lot of people who haven't even started to get to get to that
Well,
point.
and
And so, yeah,
but that's the thing is like again, I used to think my original accident was my transformation story. Like it's gonna be my founder story someday, right? Like, but it
yeah,
wasn't. It was the story that created a bunch of trash from my past that
mm,
caused me to react in many moments and to numb and be blind to what was actually taking place in my life. And to your whole point, it's like I recognize all this and yeah, I can get some help, but it's like just because I could carry the weight didn't mean it wasn't fucking heavy.
yep,
And when I'm burying all these things, whether it's conscious or unconscious that you're burying it, right? Inevitably, we can only hold so much inside. So at some point, it's going to break, right? And it's going to explode. And I think the only reason that I got onto the path is that I have as early as I have is because I just had more pain and more things that I was dealing with, and I didn't realize it for a lot of years, right? I mean, even
mm,
in the period of time I started to chase knowing who I wanted to be, like trying to understand it, but what I was in need of was who I was, who I want to do this with, who I want to do this for, and who I want to impact, right?
yeah,
But what did I have? I didn't have a model for that. I had a model for chasing what? What house? What car? What amount of money? What amount of success? And so that
mm,
became my core focus, right? and I, by the way, again, I'm really good. I know that mindset works because whenever I set my mind to something, it fucking happens.
Yep.
Right. So we did that. And I went out and I had all the what's I ever wanted by the time I was 27. Our business was $10 million by that time. It was growing. I had a beautiful wife, the house, the car, the money. And then I woke up and realized I had it all, but it cost me who I was. And now all of a sudden I'm sitting
What
in
do you
these
mean by that? It
circles
cost
of
you.
people.
I'm going to interrupt. What
Man,
did you
it
mean?
cost my soul, it cost my relationships, it cost my creativity, it cost my sense of self because my identity got
Mm.
wrapped up in what I did and what I could acquire. Right. And I want to be really clear here. I'm not vilifying chasing money. It's that I didn't have clarity on why I was chasing money at the time, other than I wanted to do it. Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't to the place of impact totally at that point, even though we had this philosophy of giving until it hurts always. When I lost who I was, it's because I realized how empty I was still inside, how disconnected I still was, how I still didn't have worth. And it was that moment that I started to look inward. I hired my first coach ever, and I started to unpack and realize like I'd been dealing with shame for a very, very long time. Right. Shame
Mm.
that was showing up in my business, showing up in my relationships, showing up in ways that I didn't even quite realize. And I want to pause and tell you, shame has two talk tracks. It's you're not worthy, you're not good enough. And I had moments there, but I'd be lying if I said that was my narrative. It was the other, because when I would shut that down, show up in the arena and go to battle, it was always, who do you think you are? You see, the bigger I lived, the more I accomplished, the more I felt the need to apologize for everything because I felt like it was making others feel small. And what I also now know is I chased all the what because my unconscious mind believed that if I built a life of significance, a life of prominence, a life of success as we defined it, maybe people would just want to be around me. But yet I'm completely
Mm.
alone. And that was really the rebuild of what I've been unpacking for the last 12 years. And that's where I started to unpack different components to it. And, there's another 5-year window that we'll get to. And then I think we'll unpack it even further. But I didn't even realize that I wasn't feeling a whole lot until I was 32. I'm with my
Mm.
daughter. We just get done playing and she kisses me on the cheek, puts her arm around my neck and says, I love you, Dada. She's 2 at the time. And I start bawling in tears, like pure joy. Like just, I'm like elated. I'm floating. I'm up here. And the only other time that happened in my life was my wedding day. I just didn't know it. I didn't know that's what it was. And so there's not a good singular picture from our wedding day because I do not have a pretty cry face. Right. But I'm like, I'm feeling this in depth and I'm sitting here going, wait a minute. Like every other emotion I've ever felt is pale in comparison to this.
Mm.
And then I started to sit with and realize that when I shut off physical pain because it exceeded my ability to cope, I needed to for survival, right? Like I had to shut off physical pain. That was a mental shift that I made. It was a choice.
Yeah.
But when I shut off physical pain, I also shut off spiritual pain, mental pain, and emotional pain for 20 to 25 years. And it almost cost me everything and everyone I care about because it came out in anger. It came out in aggression. It came out in edge. And it came out in a way that I was damaging those that I loved most.
Wow. Yeah. I'm just kind of letting that sit because it's heavy, man. And I think there's so many people who can relate to this story, like just pushing down, the past and pushing down the things that happened to them when they were kids and not realizing that maybe unforgiveness and just all the things that's happened in their life is affecting their current relationships and it comes out, it triggers in anger and frustration or how
That's
you
right.
respond to things and they don't even
It's
know
100%
sometimes
right.
where it's coming from.
But what does the world tell us, right? The world tells us to show up, put a smile on, right? You can't feel emotions, right? Like you got to be joyous. Hey, you got to work. You got to like, you can't let anything get in your way. So what do we all start to do? It's like we get these like elements of armor that start disconnecting us, right? But to the whole
Mm.
point of what you said on people push down, it's like the world tells you, there's that flag again. The world tells you to
I saw
push
it this time.
through. But every time you push through, you do push down. You're
Yeah.
ignoring something. Every time you're pushing through, you do. And if we think about people, right, there's 2 types of people, just like there's 2 types of trash cans, those with lids and those without.
Mm.
Those without are those individuals that walk in the room and it's like their dog just died, their car's dead, like everything, their frequency's zapped, they're way down low, right? They're just moan and groan. And here's the thing, they can only push
Yeah.
down so much because if they don't have a lid, it can't contain it.
Mm.
But if you think about it as your home, right? Like everybody in COVID brought health, kids, extended family into their homes, businesses into their homes, right? You don't think that if you don't take out your trash in your house every day, it's not going to overflow and start to fill up your kitchen, inhibiting your ability to eat good quality food, healthy nutrition, connection, communion? You don't think it's going to go down
Yeah.
the hallways to impact the relationships with your kids, right? Like Again, if you don't take it out regularly and you just keep pushing down, if you don't have a lid, it will just overflow and fill whatever environment you're in. But then there's people like me. There's people like me who have a lid. And it's even more dangerous in some cases because it can hurt a hell of a lot more in the moment. Okay? I had a seal on my lid and I had chains around the can and I threw it in the bottom of the ocean because not even my parents were going to know how much I was suffering, right? Like, because that's how much armor I was carrying. But every time I would push through, I'd push down. I'd push through, I'd push down. Well, guess what? When I've got a seal on a lid, all I'm doing is continuing to build more and more and more trash pressure that's going to release a bomb of trash shrapnel at some point when I react in a moment that I don't even realize what I'm reacting to. Right? And it would show up like this. My wife would say something like, "Hey, honey, what do you want to do with the kids this weekend?" And my shame filter would cause me to hear it this way. "Hey, honey, you've not done enough to be a good husband and father here recently, so what are you going to do to make up for it this weekend?" And then I'd react in the moment. I'd get all defensive and I'd rattle off the 10 things I've done in the last 4 days to show her I'm a good husband and father when it wasn't even what she asked. Right? So when people push down, it's inevitable that it will come out. Right? And what I say about the trash from your past, and I say this very clearly to everybody, it's not your fault.
Yeah, that's good.
It just becomes your responsibility once you become aware of it or you start burying others in yours.
Yeah. I mean, it's the responsibility is the thing, especially when you have kids and a wife, and like that's, that is part of your responsibility to be a father and to be a husband, and you can't be your very best if you haven't dealt with things in your past because it's affecting those relationships. And yeah,
that's right.
No, that's really good. And so, yeah, I want to know what was next.
Well, I'll tell you what's next. 32 is when I realized this. 35, which was only 3 years ago, I left my brick and mortar business. My wife in 2019 had suggested that she'd seen fear enter in my world in a way that she'd never seen me operate. She believed I wasn't making the impact on the world, nor was I reaching even the surface of my potential. And she went on to tell me, because again, though I'd been on this discovery of self and reconnection and understanding, she went on to tell me that all they needed was 100% of me and they didn't have it. So we doubled down on the bet and went into the world to get to the core of helping other people get clear on who they are and surround themselves with the who's that support it, live the lives, build the businesses, have the impact that they want to have. And less than a year after leaving, so June 1st of 2020 is when I left my last business, executed the buy, sell, and left. It was 10 months later after this challenge. And less than a year later, April of 2021, we sit on the back patio and she goes on to tell me that things I'd done, ways I'd shown up, patterns, some of which still existed today, had contributed a path for her to lose who she was. Like, brother, man, like, I'm literally focusing outward in the world to help everybody do this. And the person I care and love about most tells me that I'm responsible for contributing to her losing who she was. That was like a dagger to the heart, bro.
Yeah.
And we started to unpack that just a little bit, because though I had my shame very clear at this point, my anger, the example that I gave you of those reactions were taking place still in this window. And I was unaware of the anger that I had. It was buried so deep, brother, it could barely be excavated. And when I actually came to accept that I had moments of anger, I want to be really clear. I was a great dad, a great husband. I've never hit him. I've never verbally abused him, but I have a big energy. And if dad's grumpy, everybody feels it, right? And it would come out in these moments that would typically have nothing to do with them, but they would feel it and absorb it, right? And so the anger is something we started to unpack, and I hadn't seen it for years. I made a promise to her that day. I said, I'm going to do everything in my power to ensure that the negative effects of anger do not impact our house as a result of me again, knowing that I'm human and knowing that I'm not perfect.
Sure. Yeah.
But I also cleared my calendar for 10 days so that I could actually go inward and really get clear on some of the sources of where this anger came from, because it supports a lot of what we teach. And as a result of unpacking that anger, that's where we got a lot of clarity around developing the waste to wealth method, which are the 5 pillars that we teach. And I'm happy to say that 18 months later, in the first 18 months after it, there was probably the negative effects of anger affected our house as a result of me maybe 3 or 4 times. It's not happened in the last 18 months. And now what I say, and this is where I am very rarely really clear, my wife and I have been together for 17 years. We hid from each other for 14, even though we didn't want to. And she's only felt emotionally safe with me for about 18 months. Now, I was given the greatest gift I was ever given about 6 months ago, because I was still carrying a little bit of energy I hadn't processed and forgiven myself for my kids, right? Because they don't deserve that. Everything I was reacting to with them had to do with an insecurity in me anyway, right? Like they're the greatest mirrors and reflections of ourselves. And if she wasn't feeling emotionally safe, I'm sure they weren't either. But 6 months ago,
Mm.
I found out that they don't even remember having an angry dad. So the work that we've done to break generational patterns, to set healthy and effective
Yeah.
boundaries, even with some extended family members that have elements that we don't want our kids to experience, right? It's
Mm.
working. And I went so deep and I've done so much work. I'm living a life that I never have. And to bring this full circle so that you understand, this is I'm really, really big on alignment and congruence in life,
Yeah.
right? Like really big on alignment and congruence. And I've been working really, really hard for years because I've been in daily physical pain for almost 31 years. I mean, high amounts of pain that start to inhibit my quality of life in some cases. And it's just something I've learned to deal with and work through. And I've got a gazillion nervous system and routine stuff that I do to take care of it. But I haven't had any physical pain in 9 months. And I don't
Wow.
think that that's a coincidence that I actually healed much of the pain that I was still carrying with me, the stuff that I was still pushing down, the stuff I was ignoring, right? That kept showing up in my life as my fatal flaw. And now all of a sudden I'm in a position where I'm being asked to respond to a situation in front of me that I normally would have reacted to. And the only reason I responded in that moment instead of react is because I thought I was in the best place in my marriage I ever had been. And that would have been true up until that moment. And then I was in a
Mm.
position where I didn't know if I'd be married for another 30 days.
Wow.
My wife is everything to me. And so it was enough of a motivation that I saw no other way than to actually feel so that I could heal and start to move forward for myself and my family.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. So literally it's been like in the last 18 months that you found this freedom, and it was from like dealing with the emotional things and being real even with your wife and kid, and allowing, I mean, just and in it you've dealt with the emotional and the spiritual and all that, and it's actually led to even healing, no pain in the physical. Is that what you were saying? That's, I mean,
That's
that's
exactly right. Because here's the thing, my physical body healed years ago, right? From
mm,
the actual injury, right? I've got ancillary stuff. I don't have a tricep in my left arm. I don't have a lat on the left side of my back. I've got a curve in my spine as a result of it. There's little things that are a result, but my physical body stopped hurting when my heart did.
wow, that's amazing. And now you're helping people and you mentioned 5 pillars, but now you're helping people kind of go through the same healing process that you were like forced into basically figuring out how to
Yeah.
do. Is that right?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, I say that I needed to do these things, and I'm trying to teach them and get them into the world so that people have the choice and opportunity to do them without needing to.
Yeah.
So our pillars, what we call it, the waste to wealth method, and it's 5 pillars. And because of my years in entrepreneurship and my years in consulting and all of the background that I have, it's more than just individuals, right? The pillars are designed to help any individual or organization identify and remove the waste they didn't even know existed within their walls, or transform it into wealth generating activities that will connect and convert in the growth of their life and business. It's really about showing
Say
them
that
how
second
to,
part again.
or transform that waste into wealth that will connect and convert in the growth of their life and their business.
Wow.
I believe that most of our treasure is actually formed in the same moments as our trash. They just get trapped underneath the trash, right? And then they're formed by all that trash pressure. So not only do we have to dig deep enough to actually excavate fully and remove the source of those low frequency energy emotions, but that's also when we start to discover the treasure that was formed in those same moments, right? We get to unlock
Mm,
different parts of ourselves. And yeah, my freedom of life has come from the acceptance that we are beings that live and exist in 4 realms: mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional.
yep.
And they all overlap with each other,
Yep.
right? So if you shut one off or you numb one or you're hurting in one, like there will be a ripple effect. This freaking fly, man. I don't know what's going on. There will be a ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
But when we can start to understand that they aren't interdependent, they actually feed off each other, then it's about focusing on your holistic self and how do you continue to elevate the level of consciousness, your awareness, right? So that you can move the unconscious to the conscious, so that you no longer have to feel like a victim or like life is fate. Because through the
Mm,
process of moving the unconscious to the conscious, we are given information, we're given feedback that points us towards what's important. We have
yeah.
opportunities to make choices that allow us to change, heal, or break certain things that are no longer serving us. And so that's what this is all about, is again, helping individuals and organizations understand where this is showing up and preventing them from the growth of their business, or the longevity and sustainability with relationships with their clients, or not being able to facilitate, a culture of giving and feeling, because it's all toxicity and shame around results, right? Like there's all of these things that like most people don't understand how to bring out the best of people. We got to clear out the interference based on the waste from things that we don't even realize consciously are affecting us.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Because I mean, how they treat their employees, their clients, everything is affected by what that, that trash that's been compressed. And instead of, I mean, I really like what you said there. It's almost like the pressure of it can either like break pipes or make diamonds. And it's like you said, like the treasure's there, the diamond's there. It's just a matter of removing the trash.
You just got to dig deep enough to unlock it. Like that's it.
And so how do you take somebody?
Here's the thing. I mean, what you just hit on too, though, hits on the human experience. And let's cover this, because I think this is really important for people, right?
Yeah,
I think we all seek and desire four things. Four things we all seek and desire. And this isn't about the pillars. This is about understanding how we connect, right?
Yep.
We all want to feel safe. We all want to feel protected. We all want to feel seen and understood. And we all want to feel connected, right?
Yeah.
Like we all want that. And the second we walk into an environment that we don't feel safe, protected, seen, or connected, right? It could be a networking event where you just know everybody's handing out business cards and they want something from you. It could be going back to your extended family's house for the next holidays and you've got 20 years of experience of believing how they're going to show up. So you already go in a little like, armored and protective, right? There's any number one of those situations, because the second we don't feel safe and protected, what do? We protect ourselves. Now, if you imagine, those 35-gallon black trash bags for like outdoor bins?
Yeah.
Imagine unfolding one and grabbing one on each corner, right? That's your trash, but it's also what creates your armor, because armor protects pain. Pain is what's connected to our trash, right? And so if we recognize this is our armor, okay, I want you to imagine holding out that black trash bag in front of you, Kyle, right? Above eye line, okay? And then imagine now anybody in your life, I don't care who it is, maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a kid, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's clients that you want to see and understand and connect with you at the deepest level. How could you ever expect them to see you, understand you, know your value, your worth, your boundaries, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, your heart, your intent, your desires, your actions, all of it delivered through an opaque force field? And that's, by the way, assuming they're not carrying their own level of self-protection and armor that's going to further dilute the message. Yeah. And so what we teach is this concept of a protector and a connector, someone who has the ability to lower their own armor and wrap a layer of protection around the environment they're in. That way everyone can feel safe. Everyone can feel protected, everyone can feel seen and understood, and everyone can feel connected. But it requires two things, what I call a strong spine and a soft front. Strong spine is like, I know who I am. I know what I'm willing to do. I know what I'm not willing to do. I know my boundaries, my values, all of it, right? Because if I know that and I know who I am so clearly, then I can be unwavering in any environment, right? Which inherently means I have nothing to protect. And so if that becomes the case, then I can effectively lower my armor and have that soft front. Now, I think of my wife and kids in this example, because if they want to come to dad to be consoled, to have something emotional, do they want to lay their head down on a metal chest piece of armor? No.
Yeah.
And so the reality of it is that there's two ways to lower the armor. One, we can fabricate it in a moment by convincing ourselves that we're safe. Or two, we can lean into the third pillar of our waste to wealth methodology, which is to effectively unpack it and understand intellectual and emotional narratives that were created, heal through the things that are still keeping you stuck, to a place that you actually no longer get triggered there anymore and feel the need to protect.
Yeah. How does somebody go and get healed in that? Like, what is it that they do? Is it just acknowledging it, or like forgiving that person, or themselves?
So there's a process, and it totally depends on like what it's connected to, right? Like, for example, I mean, I told you where some of my roots of shame came from. It's because my truth wasn't being seen and understood. I wasn't accepted. I felt like I always had to justify and defend everything that was coming out of my mouth, right? So I would get defensive because I would always tell the truth, but not everything would be seen and understood, right? It could be individuals who, their parents were never around, or they put their primary attention on the siblings, and the first time they got any attention, validation was when they joined sports, and they learned to receive love, validation, and connection through performance. Right? Like there's so many different ways that shame shows up, because it's the ultimate wolf in sheep's clothing. It presents itself as about 50 different emotions. But the unpacking process is feeling for the sake of healing. Okay, this is actually getting yourself in your body, understanding the physiological patterns that show up in moments. Why is that important? Well, Because most people will define it as, well, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling heavy, I'm feeling anxious, or I can't catch my breath, right? Those are great descriptors. And if you have that much awareness, keep it. But I want you to go deeper. What's happening with your heart rate? What's happening with your respiration? Do you lock up anywhere in your body? Does your jaw get tough? Do you have a welling in your throat? Do you feel a knot in your stomach? Like legitimately physiological symptoms, what happens? Okay. Because when we can start to do that, we also can transport ourselves back to the origin points of when we started to feel that originally. We can unpack the intellectual and emotional narratives, and we get to tap into the 40,000 cells in the heart that are sensory neurites, brain-like cells that carry cellular memory. They've shown that if you go through the intellectual process alone of unpacking the patterns of your past and you don't embody the associated emotions, those cells don't heal. So you won't actually move forward and learn. This supports the point of we need to feel in order to heal, which is about completing that 18-inch journey from our head to our heart. But that's sometimes a really scary place to exist for most people. And many of us learned to cut off at the neck years ago, and we live up here. But when you're operating under intellectual armor, you're disconnected from your full self. And there's no way that your subconscious mind can engage your mind and your body to put your emotions in motion, which is possible for all of us.
No, that's good. I'm just like kind of taking it all in. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. So for this, somebody out there who's feels like, man, like I guess what's the one thing that you are really helping people do? Is it, I mean, you put it in a phrase of taking out the trash, but is it experiencing inner healing? Is it,
I would tell you that most of what I do is help people get back to the core of who they are, their most authentic selves, and stand in their power and potential and their voice, potentially for the first times ever in their life. It creates an element of freedom that produces literally joy, freedom, and fulfillment. And it's getting people out of their own way and getting the trash that's not their fault out of their way so that they can move forward in life, because there's no reason to remain stuck.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Yeah, there's no reason to remain stuck. And for the person who's feeling stuck, what would you tell them? Like, is that one step or one thing that they can do?
I think the greatest investment that anyone can make, I'm going to say there's two. I think the greatest investment any entrepreneur can make is in nervous system regulation. I'll keep that really basic. But to answer the question directly, I think nervous system regulation can help open you up because it can take some of the edge down. But I think the greatest investment anybody can make is in awareness and intentionality. Right? If you go to an intentional effort to raise awareness from a place that's objective and non-judgmental, meaning don't go to the place of awareness so that you just become more aware of all the ways you should be judging yourself and blaming yourself, but look at it through an objective, neutral lens to understand the intellectual and emotional narratives and beliefs that were formed in those moments that your life is only further validated as you've gone on. And when you can start to unpack those and start to realize that, the world tells us to reduce, eliminate, or avoid pain at all costs. And guess what? Our fight, flight, or fawn is a direct result of survival.
Yeah.
But we live in a different world now. Like 100 years ago, you cut your leg, you could die, but that's not the reality for most of us anymore. So it's time to update our operating systems and start to realize that, like, again, the moment you protect yourself, you disconnect yourself. And so I would say raise your level of awareness. And I would tell you that most people know when they get triggered. They may not know the patterns. They may not know how it shows up. They may not know how to move through it. But if you know the moment you get triggered, you get defensive, you get in any way, I want you to just pause in that moment and just say, is what I'm reacting to due to what's right in front of me or the trash from my past? And then immediately follow it with a secondary question. What am I protecting right now? Because inherently, any reaction is formed because of the armor and protection that exists for self-preservation. When we realize we have nothing to protect, or we find the source of what we're protecting, we can start to unwind and rewrite the narratives that are keeping us stuck.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. So I guess who taught you how to do this? Was there somebody that you learned from? I mean,
I have a lot of mentors. I will tell you that the model that we built and the level of understanding around human behavior and performance has come through deep study with human behavior, human performance, and human connection, both from books, both from direct mentors. I've worked nonstop with a minimum of one coach, many times multiple coaches for the last 12 years. I've had a spiritual and consciousness coach for the last 3.5, right? And And why do I tell you all this? Because I've learned a lot from a lot of different people, and I don't always know the direct source. Okay.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
I do know is that what I created was because there was nothing else out there like it. I didn't have a model that I could use to unpack these things and do it in a way that I was safe. I didn't feel like garbage all the time, and that I was actually finding a way to reverse the patterns that kept happening in my life. So that's why I created this whole model. And again, we probably don't have time to go through it, but the 5 pillars are really getting people to understand how to do this themselves, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I had to develop it because it didn't exist. And that's what I'm proud of now, is that I have people literally saying like, man, I didn't even know this was available. I'm like, well, it wasn't until I built it, because I didn't
Yeah,
have it, but I did it out of
yeah.
need, again, so that others don't have to. But man, you can look across the board. I listed a variety of coaches and mentors. I'll tell you one that has really helped me in an area of armor that I didn't even realize I was still carrying until about 2 years ago. David Meltzer, who you and I met
Yep.
through. He and I've had that joint show live now for
Yeah,
two
yeah.
years. You were a great guest on it. It was amazing. It was fun. We had a blast.
Yeah, it was fun.
But I asked him, he's a mentor, he's a friend. And I just asked him one day, a couple of years ago, and I said, Dave, like, what am I missing? Like, what am I not seeing? What am I blocking? What am I like just, and it wasn't that I was in a bad place. I just was like, hey, what am I not seeing about myself that you can reflect back to me?
Yeah.
And he said, Brian, you're really shitty at receiving. I was like,
Hmm.
what? And he said, yeah. He said, I've watched you now for years. You'll go ask anybody for anything if the perceived benefit is for someone else, the community, an organization you're supporting, a client, a friend, or whatever. He goes, the
Yeah.
second you believe you perceive it's going to impact you, you don't ask. And he was freaking right. He hit me in the middle of the forehead with a 2x4. Right. But that was an area of self protection, because what was that? That was ego. That was still my inability to ask for help. And that was still me not being able to actually receive. I was in a place in my entire life where I felt I had to give, do, just to be seen in the world. Right.
Hmm.
So I had to really unwind some things, because I received love, validation, and connection through performance for a lot of my life.
Yeah.
To be centered in myself and to realize that my worth, my value is not dependent on any outside measure. It's
Yep.
100% based on what I believe and how I show up in the world.
Yep.
Then I get to understand ways to bring and recycle energy and resources back in. And money it's currency. It's a root of the
Sure.
word current, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is a
yeah.
flow. It's an energy just like everything else. And though I had made a lot up until that point, I was still blocking what I was really capable of receiving. And it wasn't just money. It was love. It was
Yeah.
connection. It was other things. And so really these last 2.5 years, in combination with unpacking the anger with my wife and really applying that concept from a friend and mentor, I believe we need people in our lives who see us in ways that we don't see ourselves,
Yeah.
both
That's
in
really
things
good.
that are keeping us stuck, but also within our potential. And I would argue that those are the three things that I happen to have a unique gift at seeing in people: is I see their pain, I feel
Hmm.
their pain, I see their protection, but I also see their potential. And so I know that through the combination of those three things, I can help them heal their pain so they no longer have to protect. And that's when they unlock their potential.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's good. And that's a great gift to have, to be able to feel and see and know where they're at and say like, hey, I can see, I know where you're at, maybe because you've been there or you felt it or whatever it is, but you can see almost like the roadmap on how to get them to unlocking a lot
Yep.
of their potential. So that's awesome. That's awesome. What are some of the projects maybe that you're working on now? Because it sounds like you've kind of shifted in recently and had a ton of breakthrough, and it's only just the tip of the iceberg, almost. What's some of the
It
projects?
is the tip of the iceberg. In fact, the shift 18 months ago, when I told you my wife felt emotionally safe, all these different things, there was a whole combination of events that took place about 18 months ago that just made it very, very, very abundantly clear how out of alignment I was in a few key areas. And what that
Hmm.
led to was closing down some business entities, some partnerships that there was, I'll just keep it brief and say there was lack of alignment at that point. And I
Yeah.
was absorbing a lot more of the risk and a lot more of the work than was ever a part of the original arrangement. And so we did a reset. We burned everything to the ground 18 months ago.
Wow.
And we literally rebuilt all of our business models, the different offerings, the ways people can jump in. We're very, very targeted and focused. And it was like that last 18 months, that was like when I realized that I was still operating with some level of ego-based consciousness and self-preservation, because those other businesses existed because I didn't believe that I could make it just coaching and speaking and helping entrepreneurs and people get to the next level. Like there was still an
Yeah.
unconscious block there that became really clear. And so we shut it all down because there was a lot of distraction, and we've really rebuilt everything that we're doing. So we've got communities now. We have low ticket offers for people to actually come in and get the help they need with zero or very low barrier of entry. We finally are in a place where I'm not just doing only one-to-one work. In fact, most of my
Mhm.
one-to-one work is limited in positions, but I'm now in a place where most of my one-to-one engagements, I'm getting rev share or equity because of the enterprise value I typically have in the organization working with the leaders.
Nice.
And so those are elements of what I'm really excited about. But we now have a variety of high-level group programs that are really bringing the power of community together beyond just some of the lower level stuff that we're doing within our basic level community, where we're helping people in everyday stuff. We now are
Mm.
showing them and teaching them a variety of ways to use connection and conversion in the growth of their business, leveraging digital media, message, how they're showing up. And it's all integrated in the Ways to Wealth methodology on them helping to understand how do they actually stand in their voice, their power, and their potential so they can attract and bring and have the impact they want in their lives. So the group
Yeah.
stuff is great because the one to many gives me the chance to also leverage the power of community,
Yep.
which is about transference and transformation. One person has a breakthrough and the whole room feels it, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those things that truly it shortens the curve, putting a lot of people who are pulling in the same direction in the same room.
Mhm.
I would tell you that that's been our core focus in our business.
Yeah.
I'm also now finally at this point. I used to do a ton of speaking. And as we were in the rebuild and wrap up method, I was on less and less stages. So I'm getting out back on stages again. I'm getting back in front of
Nice.
crowds, moving rooms in a way that I know I'm capable. Because every time I do that, every time I'm in front of people, our world grows. And
Yeah.
and I don't say that to brag. I don't say it to impress. It's just I know that about myself now. So I have to be in front of as many people as I can be because that's
Yep.
my opportunity to impact as many.
Yeah.
I'm having a lot of fun with our podcast that we started this year. It's the first time I get to be more interested than interesting. I'm loving the long
Yeah.
form depth of what we're getting out of people, and the relationships that are developing in and around my life right now, and opportunities are flowing. And I want to say all of that through the lens of January and February of this year were the two worst financial months I've ever had as an entrepreneur because burning everything down cost a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I say all that to say it's like, look, guys, I've made a shitload of money. I've lost money. But what do I recognize? I understand the value of time, and I just have to be in business another day to have another chance to impact another person. And we're far than just having one more day at this point. But earlier in this year, I was like not knowing what it was going to look like. So I'm reinvigorated, man, because I'm all impact focused at this moment, and I'm
Yeah.
so dialed in my boundaries that anything that lacks depth doesn't interest me and I'm not involved in. And anything that lacks alignment or congruence, I say no to. And it's
Wow.
amazing. Just
Yeah.
those two little
It's a
simple
powerful
shifts,
position to be
how
in
much
or to
it
be able to
opens
do
up
that.
capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. You mentioned the podcast. What was the name of the podcast?
It's Flipping the Lid. And you can go to flippingthelid.com, spelled out just
Okay.
like it sounds. Gives you a little feel for who it is. And man, my whole venture on that was to flip the lid inside the lives of some of the most significant, successful people who've created impact in this world. And, I was
Yeah.
blessed in my first, 10 episodes to have people like, Dave Meltzer, Brad Lee, Darren O'Lean, right? And many others. I've had people worth $250 million come and sit in my chair and tell me they realized they woke up one day when they were 40 and realized they were as empty as their 15,000 square
Mm.
foot house, even though their bank account was more full than it ever been. We're having honest
Wow.
conversations, not the highlight reels of how they built their lives and their businesses, but like, what's the shit they had to unpack? How did they move through it? Where are they
Yeah.
now? Where are they still protecting? Like, really
Mm.
bringing and normalizing these conversations back into society. We just, Drew Brees just agreed to be on our show. So that was one I was
Nice.
really excited about. And,
Heck yeah.
again, he's somebody that's willing to go there and to be transparent. And, I'm bringing people in who recognize one of the things I teach, which is that true strength, like true, real strength, actually hides behind vulnerability.
Yeah, it's good. True strength actually hides behind vulnerability. And so when people are vulnerable and real, it allows their strengths to come out.
And it allows everyone to feel safe, everyone to feel protected, everyone to feel seen and
Protected.
understood, and everyone to feel connected, right? It's like, that's the thing, is like, if you don't have anything to protect, there's no armor. right?
Yeah.
You just get to be. And that's what I've realized is the more I can be, the more I am. I just want
Mm.
to show everyone that.
Yeah. No, that's really good. That's really good. I think, I've learned a lot just having this conversation. And I'm excited to be more vulnerable in my relationships and with my, my sphere of people and all of that. Cause I think that's where the breakthrough and where some of this stuff can really happen. Right. So that's good.
It is.
That's good, man. What so if someone's wanting to find you, Brian, where would they find you? How would they follow you? What's the best place?
Yep. If you're on social media, go to @BogertBrian on any and all channels, including YouTube. It'll be easy to find us. You can also just drop my name or my business in Google and say Brian Bogert, and you're going to find a bunch of other shows I've been on and other things. There's endless hours of material out there that you can absorb for free. But one of the things that I also mentioned to you is we offer 30 days free in our coaching community. And we do
Yeah.
that on purpose because, again, that's our low barrier of entry for people to get the help they need. We
The
want
rapid
individuals
fire
to know
coaching.
and see and
Yeah.
feel what the environment can feel like. And so I don't have a link that I can easily list off, but I know the link will be in the show notes. And I would
Yep.
just encourage anybody who's interested in learning or going deeper, or if you find yourself stuck in any way, I don't care what category of life it is, come check us out, because it's pretty incredible what can happen in minutes and moments that most people believe is either impossible or they think is going to take decades.
Yeah. No, I think you're starting a movement, Brian, and you're allowing people who even mention it, like people who have had greatness and done great things, what's allowed them to go to that next level. And it seems like it's unpacking that vulnerability when they were vulnerable, or there's another layer that they haven't even tapped into that now they're realizing, like, wow, if I can be vulnerable in this way, then think
It's
of what
actually
could
both.
happen.
Yeah, it's both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's both.
Yeah. That's
I have experienced both, and I'm working with individuals that fit both descriptions.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Because I think there's a real need, obviously, in the business world, but across the board, in schools and teachers and every aspect. So I think, yeah, you're really doing some awesome stuff, man. So I'm excited to continue
Thank you,
to
brother.
to follow and learn and jump into what you guys are doing, because I think it's great.
Thank you, my
So
friend. Thank you for building a platform for me to have a chance to pour good into the world.
absolutely, man. Excited. Thanks for being on the show, brother. And we'll see you. We'll see you